After Edison, but before Bill Gates, there was Beckman. Arnold O. Beckman affected the lives of untold generations by his scientific instruments and epic philanthropic efforts. He was named to the National Inventors Hall of Fame, received the National Medal of Science, and had the ears of world leaders. He accomplished this by holding steadfast to his most cherished virtue, integrity. Arnold Beckman is an American icon and the embodiment of the American dream. Born April 10, 1900, in the small farming community of Cullom, Illinois, Arnold's early life was surrounded by hard work and simple surroundings. Displaying a curious and investigative nature at an early age, young Beckman's exploration of the family attic would yield a life-changing discovery.
I ran across in my attic a copy of Steele's 14 Weeks in Chemistry. It was printed in 1867. And in those days, chemistry was relatively simple. I started doing those experiments. I got hooked on chemistry right then. My father built a shed on the back of our lot, and I put a shelf across the back of that. That was my chemistry laboratory. So even back then, I knew I was going to be a chemist.
When he graduated from high school, the world was immersed with World War I, and he joined the Marines. Although initially assigned to frontline action, chance, fate, or destiny kept Private Beckman out of harm's way.
A bunch of us, late at night, were hauled out, picked out to go to Brooklyn Navy Yard to go aboard a battleship. The train was late, and when we got to Brooklyn Navy Yard, the ship had already sailed. We were there when the war ended, and significantly, I was there on Thanksgiving Day in 1918.
We had a big Thanksgiving dinner at the mess hall, and then a bunch of us were called out, about a dozen of us, in order to go to the Brooklyn YMCA and eat another Thanksgiving dinner. A bunch of women in that area had prepared a lot of Thanksgiving dinners for the wounded Marines coming in from France, and there weren't enough of them. So we were ordered to go out and eat those spare dinners. Well, that's no great chore when you're 18, as I was then. But the interesting thing is, one of the ladies brought her 17-year-old daughter along to help wait on the table. And I thought she was a pretty, that's the word I use, a cute trick. So I took her and her mother home, and I had a few more dates with her when I was in the area for 2 or 3 months after that. And 6.5 years later, we were married.
In the 6 years between Arnold and Mabel's first date and their marriage, Arnold attended the University of Illinois, where he earned a master's degree in physical engineering. And then he continued his studies at the California Institute of Technology, Caltech. Caltech may have had amazing facilities, but it didn't have Mabel Meinzer. Finding himself not only without his sweetheart, but also without a viable means of income, Arnold quickly remedied both by taking a job closer to Mabel at Bell Laboratories.
I never had any course in electronics, but at Bell Labs, I sat in on a few seminars they'd have on there, and I picked up a smattering of electronics, to the point that I made a few radios for Mrs. Beckman friends.
Miss Mabel Meinzer became Mrs. Mabel Beckman in June 1925. And in 1926, Arnold and Mabel headed west back to Caltech, where Arnold had accepted a position as assistant chemistry professor. Content with instructing his students and conducting research, Arnold might have stayed a teacher for the rest of his life, if it weren't for lemon juice.
A classmate of mine from the University of Illinois, and Tom, was working out of the California Fruit Growers Exchange, and he had to measure the acidity of lemon juice that had been heavily dosed with sulfur dioxide. Well, ordinarily you'd use a hydrogen electrode. You couldn't use a hydrogen electrode because of the sulfur dioxide. And so I suggested that he use a vacuum tube voltmeter instead of a galvanometer. I built him one. He came back, and I wondered if I built him another one. But if he could use 2 of these, well, there might be a market for them. So I decided to make a few more.
Arnold and Mabel became traveling salesmen, visiting chemistry colleagues across the U.S. to introduce his new invention. What started as an instrument created for a friend to monitor local lemon juice is now used globally. As his business began to grow, Arnold left Caltech and formed National Technical Laboratories, later becoming Beckman Instruments. Despite the success of the pH meter and the formation of his own company, Arnold was always quick to dispute, if not refute, his prowess as a businessman.
I don't consider myself a businessman. No, I can cite you some horrible examples to prove that I was not a businessman.
But Dr. Beckman's success and contribution didn't stop with the pH meter.
Yes, when I think of the discoveries that have been made in medicine, and most of them use not only the pH meter, but the most important one has probably been the spectrophotometer. That opened up a whole new era of being able to analyze organic materials.
The list of Dr. Beckman's inventions continues with the development of the helipot, an essential component to radar systems. An infrared version of the spectrophotometer used in manufacturing process controls, and an oxygen analyzer was first used in submarines, but later had widespread use on the civilian front in medical applications.
Premature babies had a very high percentage were permanently blind. They called it retrolental fibroplasia. Doctors at Johns Hopkins found out the reason was they found that the incidence of blindness was highest in the so-called good hospitals. And that was because there's where they had these infant incubators. They could pour a lot of oxygen in there to help them breathe better. Well, they found that when they had over 40% oxygen, that caused the blindness. We made an oxygen analyzer. You could tell right away, really on a scale, what the oxygen content was.
By the mid-40s, Beckman's business was booming. During the formative years of what would go on to become a multi-billion-dollar business, its founder laid the moral foundation that would become the company's bedrock for decades to come.
The most important virtue of all is integrity. If we don't have integrity, all other virtues become meaningless because you won't know which one to believe. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. If you don't make some mistakes, you're probably not accomplishing very much. I think another thing that makes people feel good about themselves, if they realize they're doing a good job. And in fact, there's really no satisfactory substitute for excellence. And if a person knows that, that contributes to his sense of well-being.
Beckman Instruments would lead the charge in biotech, biomedicine, and life sciences by inventing and manufacturing a multitude of products and instruments still used today by researchers and scientists in the ever-expanding frontier in scientific research. Having made a fortune a dozen times over, Dr. and Mrs. Beckman would make a decision in 1976 to give back to the scientific community by creating the Arnold and Mabel Beckman Foundation.
It was to support research, particularly in the fields of biochemical research. We thought there would be a good way to dispose of the assets we had accumulated.
The Foundation's contribution started with the creation of 5 Beckman Institutes across the country. The Beckman Institute at the California Institute of Technology, the Beckman Institute at University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, the Beckman Laser Institute and Medical Clinic at University of California Irvine, Stanford University's Beckman Center for Molecular and Genetic Medicine, and the Beckman Research Institute at City of Hope. These institutes thrive and continue to train scientists to this day with world-changing contributions and discoveries in research. Following the formation of these 5 institutes, Arnold's closest friend and confidant was taken from him. Sadly, in 1989, with ever-expanding philanthropic plans on the table, Mabel, his beloved wife of 64 years, passed on. Dr. Beckman was faced with choosing to continue his massive philanthropic efforts without Mabel, or rest with the knowledge of the good that had already been done. With Mabel in mind, he set out to stay the course and continue his Herculean task of giving back. In 1991, the Foundation implemented the Beckman Young Investigator Program in hopes of finding, supporting, and nurturing the fledgling careers of future Arnold Beckmans.
It supports research, but also it supports young people. They're the ones who want to get to the young people who don't have the clout yet to get major research grants from the government or elsewhere. I'm very pleased with the quality of the people who have come up in that program.
Building on the success of the Young Investigator Program, the Foundation created the Beckman Scholars Program in 1997. The Scholars Program recognizes outstanding undergraduates in chemistry, biology, and science research at select universities across the United States. Contributing hundreds of millions of dollars to the advancement of science and education in his lifetime, Dr. Beckman saw 3 successful careers, beginning as a scientist and then as a businessman, and finally as a great philanthropist. In 2004, at an incredible 104 years old, Dr. Beckman's journey had come to an end. But even after his death, Dr. Beckman's legacy would continue in his name, and the foundation would go on to create the Beckman Arduous Award in Vision Research and the Arnold O. Beckman Postdoctoral Fellows Program. Arnold Beckman changed lives, changed science, and changed the world. He achieved something so many strive for, yet fall short of accomplishing. He made the world a better place during his lifetime and guaranteed that future generations would have opportunity to do the same thanks to his selfless philanthropy. He is an American icon, and he has proven to the world time and time again that there truly is no satisfactory substitute for excellence.